team. Um, just really appreciate all you guys do nationwide at SCORE, and in particular, the team, your teammates, Dr. Thomas, and the leadership of the Piedmont chapter of SCORE, who's been really a good friend and strategic partner of our Clemson Region Small Business Development Center for quite some years and counting. And so really it's a real treat for me to get a chance to zoom in with you guys today. It's my understanding y'all have an interest around the topic of starting a business. And I am really, really honored to share my thoughts around that particular topic with you guys on behalf of the brands that I'm representing here today. So I'm going to dial up. Give me just a second, and you should, okay, we should be synced up nicely now with our featured presentation for today. So we're going to really focus on accomplishing 3 objectives in serving you guys on the call today relative to your interest in starting a business. And first and foremost, I'm going to feed off of the warm and kind words of introduction of my presentation teammate, Dr. Bina Thomas, and I'm going to drill in just a little more on who we are, what we do, respectively at SCORE and the SBDC. And then secondly, as a professional courtesy, I'm going to lay out and make the case for the process that we advocate for starting, and quite honestly, even for expanding a business here in South Carolina. And then finally, we'll button it up toward the back end with just making sure we're real clear on how you can actually take advantage of these complimentary support resources per your discretion if you're looking for assistance in and around starting a business of your own here in South Carolina. So with that said, I just kind of set the background for who we are and what we do as from a SCORE and SBDC perspective. Here's the thing, guys, as a sector, the small business for-profit sector nationwide, year in and year out, this is long-term data per our friends at the Office of Advocacy at the U.S. Small Business Administration. Believe it or not, our for-profit small businesses nationwide create about 80% of the new jobs added every year, year in and year out, year in and year out in the economy. Furthermore, our small businesses as a sector nationwide employ over 43% of the private sector workforce. In South Carolina, the for-profit small business sector employs just a little north of 42% of the entire workforce. So you guys are huge as a sector. The small businesses really have a tremendous impact on quality of life here in South Carolina and beyond nationwide. So it was looked at some point in time, going back from an SBDC perspective back in the 70s. And really SCORE has its origins aligned with the 1950s from one of the precursors, if you would. And so really from a public policy perspective, given the economic impact of the small for-profit small business nationwide and in South Carolina, it was determined that there was a need for some economic development support infrastructure for those folks who are, again, creating over right at 80% of the new jobs year in and year out, and accounting for right at 43% of private sector workforce on an ongoing basis. So really, that's where you'll find the origins of SCORE and the SBDC. What interests me is even today, and the odds are much better of anybody standing up a new business concern in the U.S. and reaching a 10-year anniversary. But still, today, with all the support you've got, that decades, you go back decades far enough, you didn't have, is still a real challenge. It's less than 30% actually will celebrate a 10-year anniversary from a small business perspective. What interests us really in our process of support is wrapped around this understanding, is really trying to get our heads around why. What are the key wins that a new entrepreneur, a new small business owner, if you would need to navigate such that they would have a reasonable probability of celebrating longer term success. And the first of those two elements, quite honestly, are embedded in market feasibility, lack of clarity around the importance of having a target market and understanding that target market and what makes them tick and how they get their information is absolutely critical. And we saw that really from an SBA deep dive long-term data analysis. Really has trended as really the top small business killer, if you would, in the US year in and year out. Closely behind is then a lack of a compelling why us. Why would that target do business with you when they have other options, direct and indirect? Now, is that from Dr. Thomas' eyes or my eyes or anybody else's? No. And from yours, your family? No. From your target market's perspective. So those two key headwinds to us, honestly, are connected at the hip. Those are basic market feasibility constructs. And so those that's been a real challenge for small businesses to understand and really position themselves really from the beginning to understand who their audience is and have an angle aligned with a compelling differentiation statement. How do you set yourself apart to earn your fair share? And then closely third, and this is long-term data year over year from Office of Advocacy long-term research of what drives, what's most challenging for a small business that's really trying to gain traction and celebrate success over time here in the US is lack of adequate capital. And so that becomes a solvency issue. And really it's all about cash flow. Profits, you pay taxes on profits, but you pay bills in yourself with cash. And just access of cash availability is the key. And then inadequate management or leadership skills. We've worked with folks, just thinking about the folks I'm working with right now in my current client portfolio personally, is I've got everything from, quite honestly, janitorial services to highly specialized medical doctor, and who's built a practice. And I've had the honor of working with he and his team as they've, I think, into their third year now in that practice. So, and anywhere in between. Here's the thing. Some of the folks we're working with, most of them have extensive experience on the technical side of what they're doing. And in some cases, the most advanced education in the world around that topic. That said, they may have some management or leadership skill blind spots if they've never built a business and or led and managed a team. It's as simple as that. So these are really the key headwinds. So if we think about, what's happening there and what the challenge is for business to, again, do all you can to empower and position that new business to survive the test of time, it's kind of helpful understanding that. So really SCORE and the SBDC, again, were created as complementary support resources to accent the national economic development infrastructure and support exclusively to the for-profit small businesses. And we typically lean into no-cost guidance and mentorship, and also the availability and access, if you would, of no and low-cost business training, professional development topics specific to the needs of small business owners and managers. And then obviously to be in position to loop in complementary support resources when the needs of any given client might be outside of our scope of expertise or scope of work. And so again, just building on Dr. Thomas' background on on SCORE in general and the Piedmont chapter SCORE in particular. It's our friends are actually here at SCORE are part of a national network of over 10,000 strong now, again, dedicated to the support of the small business folks nationwide, with a particular emphasis through our friends at the Piedmont chapter SCORE here in the upstate of South Carolina. Our SBDC at Clemson University is actually part of a national network of SBDCs, as I referenced earlier. We're structured as an SBDC, as a true consortium here in South Carolina. My teammates and I are employees here at Clemson University. Our center, our Clemson Regional SBDC, our region center here at Clemson, is actually part of the Powers Family College of Business here at Clemson University. And we have counterparts within their respective schools of business at our consortium schools, partner schools at South Carolina State University, University of South Carolina, and Winthrop University. And we operate as a statewide consortium under the brand that I'm painting with my cursor here on the shared screen. So that, again, three things bringing us together to help get you guys off on the right foot as you're looking to start a business that could stand the test of time here in South Carolina, was to give you a little more of a deeper dive, who we are, what we do, as complimentary support resources from a SCORE and SBDC perspective. So our second objective then, again, as a professional courtesy, is to provide you an overview of the process that we advocate for starting a business and make the case for it. And so regarding the former, the process that we advocate for starting, and quite honestly, even expanding an existing business, is the old carpenter's rule: measure twice, cut once. So we use a specific tool that will allow us to collaborate with a client early regarding and kind of preliminary feasibility parameters. So this is kind of a first test. This is all about readiness. Are you ready? Are you ready to consider entering the world of small business ownership? That's a readiness type of issue. These are some basic parameters, that we're probing and taking a look at. And so I'll speak to that a little more in depth in just a moment. And then if you are ready, then do you have a specific project that appears feasible? That requires a much deeper, broader and deeper commitment to collaboration from our friends at SCORE, our SBDC support team, as well as from yourself. And so that needs to be assessed. And then from that, and quite honestly, long-term looking from our tracking here at SBDC at Clemson, it's about 20% of the folks that have leaned into us year over year for guidance around starting a business that actually end up successfully getting to a finish line of standing a new business concern up. So, we just want to make sure you understand the concerns and that you're ready. And then if so, that you've got a project that appears from our collective thought, part of that process, of course, that appears feasible as proposed. And then if so, that you've got the framework to implement by, and then we want to be here in support of you long-term as your needs may change, and they will change as you shift from a startup into an emerging business, and then later on into hopefully a successful growth-oriented small business. And we'll be around to support you on an ongoing basis. So just kind of drilling in a little bit, our initial measure, again, this is more about readiness. Is it a good fit for you and time for you? I can tell you this: if you've never been around small business ownership through yourself a prior experience through your family, friends, close friends. It can be a culture shock. It's really not for everybody, but I'm going to tell you the ones that it is for, the ones that find themselves a good fit with that world and that the timing is right for you and your family, it's probably the most rewarding of career options of folks that I've been around who when those things line up. So that's really first and foremost. And then beyond the personal readiness, does the idea appear that you're focused on appear to be right for you? And that you actually have a specific idea narrowed down such that you can really drill in and get a game plan around that to assess the project feasibility in the next phase of work. And so and then honestly, it's just an early test then around the likelihood, does it appear based on your idea and what you've got to work with and what you're trying to accomplish personally, that you could actually build a viable business around the idea. We, SBDC, use a lean plan. Our friends at SCORE would also use a more lean version of the business plan. I'm thinking the business canvas map has been the tool of choice for that early assessment from our partners at SCORE. So again, the old carpenter's rule, measure twice, cut once, that's the first measure. And here's the thing, when we work through that readiness assessment, if you was, this preliminary feasibility probing, it's not uncommon for somebody to obtain some clarity and say, this is not for me. I didn't understand that there's literally no way for me to start a business without having at least some measure of risk, even if I'm going to engage in a really small lean strategy of entering the space. It's okay. It's best on the front end before you get in it. And so that's okay. We have some folks, honestly, guys, that come in and they say, I think this is actually perfect for me. Everything sounds great. I do have a reasonable tolerance for risk. I am a self-starter. Nobody has to punch me and poke me or prod me to get out of bed and get moving. I can manage. I'm a great time manager. I'm very disciplined around things I'm committed to. So if all those things line up for you, and sometimes, though, it might not just be the right time. It might be that there's a family that depends on a steady paycheck from you right now for another couple years or so until you've got some obligations that see a successful finish line. And then that might be the more opportune time. So we run into that. That's okay. That's part of the process. That alone, guys, decreases that overall rate of failure, which is great because, we want to make sure the folks who are working and advancing into the next phase of work, everything is lining up. It's got to work for you guys and your family first. And then we move forward and assess the balance of the project. So that's really the way we go about our business. And then what is that next phase of work? This is a much deeper dive needed of you, the client, and your SCORE mentor support team. And if invited in to support you guys, because we are not mutually exclusive of our friends at SCORE. You can leverage us both at no cost. And we'd be honored if you do that point in place and time. So this level of work, the readiness is there. We've all agreed. And you have the basic parameters, elements, if you would, that we're looking for a potentially viable business concern. Again, understand who the market is. You've got an angle to set yourself apart from their options that are available to them now. And we see a path to funding the project such that you would have adequate capital around the project before you move and implement. So we add additional layers of market study research. We can fold in at that point both macro or big market and micro or small data support around that. And honestly, we can take the lead on financially modeling. We call it stress testing the business project as proposed by basically pushing numbers out 36 months at a time and stress testing cash flow for solvency. And again, what were the key headwinds that lead to business failure year in and year out here in the US? Market feasibility and lack of adequate capital. So that's, again, part and parcel to the process. It's really designed to help you guys have clarity around those most critical headwinds. And then from that, we would develop, work with you in a collaborative manner to develop out a full marketing plan and then into a full collaborative business plan, if you would, through the collaborative planning process. That's the second measure. So again, the old carpenter's rule, measure twice, cut once. That's the second measure. And so again, that first was all about readiness, personal and just basic business elements that need to be there. And then based on that, we move in a much deeper dive around a specific project feasibility check and assessment. And that's what we've done there. And then of those, and again, that's been about 20% or so, and of those looking to move forward, then your SCORE mentor and or SBDC complement would be in a position to work with you in the launch of the business. So that's measure twice. Now you're cutting. You've got a game plan. You've got a business plan to manage by, as part of the process. At this point in time, if you were looking for external capital, we would want to make sure you've got your capital commitments in hand, and then you can go ahead and set up the legal requirements around the business and proceed. We suggest a soft launch before you open the spigot full bore, just to see if you got any leaks in that thing, and you can tighten up the pipes, if you would, and connections there, and then full spigot. And then there's going to be typically a lot more frequent monitoring and refining as you go along on the early side. And then that's everything typically kind of, settles into place. We advocate from an SBDC perspective. We just lean heavily into the statewide South Carolina small business 9-step process. And guess what? Of starting a business. And guess what? This is step one. You guys are already involved in step one. And step one is all about planning. It's about planning. And so we're, available for you guys to lean into. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I just want to, again, reemphasize, we strongly suggest that you look at your friends at SCORE and our complimentary support resource at the SBDC as an ongoing support resource. So you don't really outgrow us until you've grown so big you're not considered a small business anymore. That depends on the business type, but you've got a minute. Most of those, we can do work with some businesses, depending on the type of revenues, into the $30 million a year category. Typically, if you're less than 100 employees, you're good to go as far as receiving our assistance. If you're a manufacturing concern, that number would be up to 500 employees. And again, that's anywhere from that point down. And so, I think everybody, it'll be a while. So I would say, again, understand that as after you've been in business, really typically 2, 3, 4 years, after you've really reached about 3 years, consecutive years of profitability, and that includes paying yourself what you're worth, then typically you're in a position to consider what we call scaled growth. So that might be growth. If your personal goal with the business is to build something way beyond yourself, versus a much smaller group that you're going to try to optimize, but not really build out. So if that makes any sense, and we do that through really an elevated suite of support aligned with strategic growth support. So that's really the process. So again, there's three things that brought us together today. One, again, a much deeper dive of who we are, what we do at the Piedmont chapter SCORE, who Dr. Thomas represent, and at our Clemson Small Business Development Center, of which I'm representing. And then to make the case as a professional courtesy to you for the process in general that we advocate for starting a business the right way, such that you've done all you can to mitigate those challenging headwinds, that are working against small businesses, and put yourself in the best possible position for success. And then the third and final objective for us in our time together today is to just kind of button this up and position you to move forward. So if coming out of our conversation today, you are still looking at starting a small business, then we'll be honored to work with you. You will get an email recap from our teammates at SCORE, and just follow that guidance, and that will facilitate your request for no-cost support through a SCORE mentor. And I'd suggest start with them, and then remind your mentor if you do move in past the readiness assessment piece, the early on, and at some point when you guys have determined this project's got legs, we could use some additional market research support in stress testing the project as proposed support, and that would also, I think we could bring an extra set of hands following that protocol to access to capital support on your behalf, and then be there as a complementary support team. Again, our friends at SCORE and my friends here at our Clemson SBDC are not mutually exclusive. We're designed really from a public policy perspective to be complementary support resources of each other in benefit to your benefit. So just keep that in mind. And we'll shift the program over at this point. Just comments and questions that you guys might have. I've got Dr. Thomas contact information on the screen, as well as mine. And you can also, I've got on the screen our respective websites where you can actually request assistance from either. So I'll leave those apart for now, and let's see if we can find, would anybody have any questions or comments?
I don't see any questions in the chat as of yet, but I'm hoping that there are questions from the attendees.
Yeah.
But thank you. Thank you for an informative seminar. It's always
Fantastic.
good to hear you
Well,
talk.
Yeah, well, guys, I'll encourage you, just chime in with any comments or questions you might have. We'll stick around and clear all those. I transitioned to our work with the Clemson SBDC around 25 years or so ago. I was a banking officer here in South Carolina, and it's an honor to be of service with you. So we've got Joanna's got her hand raised, and would she be able to go ahead? We'd be glad to take your comments or questions. Yes.
Joanna, we can't hear you. Okay.
And let's say Joanna is looking for the chat window, and I think she's located that. So Joanna, if you want to dial that up in chat, or you can try. You're unmuted at this point, but we couldn't hear
Oh,
you before. If you want to try it again.
yeah, no, she's unmuted, so she could speak. She
Yes.
wishes to.
Okay. Anybody else while Joanna is finding her voice or putting her question or comment in chat? Anybody else? We worked
Yeah.
through. Yes. Yes.
So Joanna is asking, what I need to know is who, where, what do I do in SC to register my business with the Secretary of
Yes.
State? I can't use a microphone. Oh, okay.
Yes, yes. That's great, Joanna. I appreciate you going the extra effort in posting your question. Um, here's it's a very simple process to register a business in South Carolina. You can do that direct with the Secretary of State's office if it's a certain type of business entity. And what I suggest is that you work with a SCORE mentor and Lupin and SBDC support as appropriate, just to make sure you've got everything else buttoned up first. And that, to me, again, if you haven't already, Joanna, I'd say before you register it, I would encourage you to get some assistance with SCORE and the SBDC as appropriate regarding the readiness assessment piece of it and the project feasibility piece. And then that registration should be then part of the phase 3 work that should follow. And because that's really the part that, is the easiest. It's just, you fill out the right form. And we use that SCBOS 9-step process for starting a business in South Carolina. That particular platform was actually created by the Secretary of State's office in conjunction or in partnership, if you would, with our friends at the South Carolina Department of Commerce. It's managed to this day by Commerce, and it's got everything. That's the best way to know you're not missing any required licensing or regulatory permits, that type of thing. So if you just Google the SCBOS, you'll find that portal and access. But I would encourage you to do that with a SCORE mentor, and if you're moving forward with it, also with SBDC support, they can make sure you're in the right portal. You're not getting spoofed into some copycat and making yourself vulnerable. So I would do that. And then the follow-up question from Joanna is, would you have to register with your city and county? If you're operating inside of the city limits, if you're transacting business inside of city limits, every municipality has its own rules. Almost all of them would require a small business license if you're transacting business within their jurisdiction. There's going to be typically a modest fee involved and then a fairly short application. So that would be the case in a municipality or city. As from a county's perspective, the county governments used to offer a service of registering small businesses for the public record in their respective counties through the clerk of court's office. Most of them do not do that anymore. But it's if you're working with your SCORE and or SBDC support through the 9-step process, SCBOS, and you'll know if it's there's a requirement for you. They'll make sure you're in good shape. So we do have a question. Okay, as far as the registration, does this apply to online businesses too, not public facing in-person business concerns? I would strongly that's a great question. That's been a fluid situation as it's been litigated by numerous states, including our great state, the Palmetto State. What I'd suggest is if you work through if you leverage those support resources that are aligned within the South Carolina Business One Stop portal, those are going to really be the folks that I would lean into for guidance. Because as you register your business and you work through the process, it's going to dial up what you need, and it won't put things in. And so it would understand as you register that business project properly, what you're doing. And I would follow that lead. From Jason, I have opened my business a few months ago. LLC is registered. Planning, marketing, and tactics are all in play. Hoping there's a checklist of things I need to keep my eyes out for. What are things I don't know? What are those things that I might not know that I don't know? That's a great question, Jason. And it kind of depends on the business model. Again, I would strongly, so it's a case by case basis. My thing is, obviously you just want to make sure you didn't miss any licensing or regulatory permit requirements. You've got all that buttoned up. I'm going to assume you probably have registered with the IRS appropriately. I'm going to assume you're a single member LLC, so you're probably going to have a record keeping system that's going to align with what you need in filing the Schedule C on behalf of the business, and those types of things. So those would be the biggest things, I think, on the front end, just making sure you got all the licensing and regulatory permits and the accounting systems that are required in place, and that you've got that. There may be, there likely would be some other kind of early generation QA or quality assurance that could be helpful to you. So again, it kind of depends on the business model. So, do you have a client management system in play such that you're actually able to leverage any data that might be available through your normal processes, such that you can make sure that folks that are contacting with you, whether you're in business to consumer or business to business or business to government support, that you're fully empowered, to let the folks that, have connected with you at some point in time, make sure that you can fully inform them of other opportunities they may appreciate. And so it would be those types of things. Eventually, if you, to a point that you are looking to actually hire an employee, again, that's a unique set of requirements of things. You just want to make sure you got buttoned up the right way. And guys, here's the thing: your SCORE mentor and/or again an SBDC complement support resource, can help you accomplish that. And you're going to request those. You can do that direct from the websites of which I'm painting my cursor. And our friends at SCORE are going to send everybody on the call a complimentary email recap to help make that a little easier for you. Another question: is there a different process for starting a business and registering for a profit versus a nonprofit? That's a great question, and the answer is yes, there is. If you're working with a nonprofit, our SBDC team can't assist you. It's based on our funding. We're for-profit, small businesses only. It's my understanding our friends at SCORE can work with local nonprofits to a certain extent. So I would encourage you to work with those folks. And then there is a resource I'd refer you to, Sharon, is for assistance, and they only work with local nonprofits in South Carolina, is an entity called Together SC. They're in Columbia, and they were formerly branded as SCANPO, SCANPO. That was the South Carolina Association of Nonprofit Organizations. If you Google SCANPO, you'll get a direct loop over to Together SC, and they can provide support to early phase local nonprofits as well as ongoing nonprofit concerns. And So if the business, this is from India, if the business is not making consistent profit, should it be registered? If the business is not making consistent profit, so should it be registered as an LLC or with a EIN? Also, what would be the difference between the two, LLC and EIN? It's a good question, India. Here's the thing: if the business is, and I'm going to assume just based on the question, you've already started the business. I would strongly encourage you to reach out to our friends at SCORE and request a mentor. You really, if you haven't registered the business, by default, you're operating as a sole proprietorship. That's okay. There's nothing illegal about that. That's fine. That's not a problem. There may be some exposure there that you may not be comfortable with, but a mentor can help you understand if that's true, because it may not be true. It just depends on what you're doing. Is there a whole lot of exposure for civil litigation or not, and given what you're doing? If there's not, that's not a bad spot to stay until you get your arms around, is this a viable business model? Can I actually accomplish my personal goals and pay myself what I'm worth in the market for all the effort, energy I'm putting into this and for the risk I'm taking on? And, before I registered it as anything, I would get my arms around that, and then I would decide. Because if not, there's a fee for registering an LLC. And there's a fee for establishing a subchapter S corporation, and there's a fee for establishing a C corporation. There's no need, in my estimation, for you to spend any additional money until you get your head around, really your arms around the business as and making the determination if it's a viable business or not. Because if you register, and then you determine it plays out that it's not, guess what? You got to pay to undo it when you stand that business down. If you're operating as a sole proprietor, there's no fee then to alert the IRS and the Department of Revenue in South Carolina that you're no longer pursuing business as that, in that context. So that would be my suggestion there. A limited liability company, just addressing that question, is one of several legal entity options for establishing and registering a business in the U.S. And so that is typically an option that has proven to be a very popular option for a lot of smaller businesses. That would give then the business owner perhaps a safeguard to compartmentalize some personal assets and personal exposure from those of the business. It has to be established properly, and it has to be administered properly for you to take full advantage of the potential benefits of compartmentalizing risk associated with that. So that's really what it drills down to on a LLC. And EIN is typically an abbreviation, as I understand it, for an employee ID number rather than a business entity type. And you would obtain an EIN from the IRS to align with any type of business entity. And that number will typically be linked to the business application and then certification or registration, if you would, of that to align with that business entity. And then Takesha is asking, do you help with or have references for business help for accounting and licensing? Yes, as if you work through the process we're advocating, again, it's Carpenter's rule: measure twice, cut once. That early measure is all about personal and basic business parameter feasibility, readiness issues. And then it's a much deeper dive in project feasibility. And then based on that, if you decide to move forward, you got a business concern, you're willing to, take the associated amount of risk that's involved forward and put that risk on yourself, then you're in phase 3 work. And when you get into that, at that point, Takesha, that's when you're going to, in that pre-launch activities planning is where you would typically want to understand the accounting system option that you're going to choose, and the bookkeeping platform that you're going to adopt, and whether or not you're going to handle your reporting of tax required reports to the IRS and the state. If you're going to do that in-house by leveraging accounting, bookkeeping, and accounting software, or if you're going to outsource that to a bookkeeping and or accounting service. So that's really where you would want to do that. And then honestly, the licensing piece would be handled on the front end of that phase 3 work. When you decide, and you've got your full funding commitment, and then you decide to take that in hand and start the business, those licensing issues would need to be buttoned up. But you're going to need, typically, you'd start with establishing the legal identity, legal entity of choice. And then as an agent of that legal entity, not personally, but as an agent of that legal entity, then you would want to apply for the proper licensing and permits on behalf of the business. If you get those things reversed, guess what? If you went and obtained, let's say, the right licenses for the business or permits, you did that personally, and then you decide that you're going to establish a legal entity around the business, LLC or subchapter S or C Corp, guess what? You got to go back and undo those licenses and pay to have them undone. And then you got to pay to have them done again as an agent on behalf of the business entity. That's why it's really critical to have SCORE or SBDC support to work with you through the process. There's no fee for anything that we're going to do to help you on the ongoing consulting and guidance and mentorship. So I would leverage that, because if not, you can tangle yourself up if you don't do these things in the right order. They're not very complicated, but they just need to be executed in the right order. So just think kind of dominoes, if you would. You want to make sure you got them lined up in the proper order. So in India, thank you. I appreciate your kind remarks. Any other questions or comments that you guys would have?
I don't see any, Ben.
Fantastic.
But thank you for taking those questions, and thank you to the attendees for posing the questions.
Very good.
Oh, there's one more. Does SBDC help with applying for government grants to start your business?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeanette. I appreciate you asking that. Here's the thing. I've been doing this a long time. I don't know of any viable grants, any legitimate grants for starting a small business. The federal grant platform you'll find at grants.gov. And again, be careful. There's a lot of spoofs out there that'll try to get you into their portal and get your personal information and sell it. So be careful. I would work with a mentor, SCORE mentor around that kind of stuff. I'm not aware of any federal grants to start a small business. Sometimes, I have been aware of some local community incentives, some of the Main Street initiatives designed to encourage potential small business owners to put together a pitch and compete for some seed money that are funded through some grant initiatives. I'm aware of some of those in the past, and some of those might be ongoing. there could be some legitimate philanthropic entities who might provide some incentives typically in a competitive manner for somebody to seek to empower one of their constituencies through some seed money support of a small business. Typically, but the typical route for somebody looking to start a business, quite frankly, is most of the time it's personal investment of which you're putting in at least typically 20% of the total startup cost. Typically 20%, if not more. And then there are a few loan programs that are backed by the Small Business Administration that will consider small business startups. And so that's the typical. And then, families and friends, might be a viable funding option for startup concerns. So, that's usually the landscape. There's not a whole lot, and there may be an exception to every rule, but there's not a whole lot from a grant perspective in starting a business in general. There's some caveats to that but that's in general, that's what you're looking at. And then Takesha's looking for a phone number to score. And Lakeisha, if you can see my slide, my suggestion would be the score.org/Piedmont. That's going to connect you with Dr. Thomas' team at the Piedmont chapter SCORE, and then they're going to have all their contact information embedded. You can request assistance through that platform, or I'm sure they're going to have a specific phone number that you can call and actually speak to somebody personally, one-on-one. Yeah.
I do thank you, Ben, for taking
Yes.
that. And I agree with what you said, and I do believe that going through the website would be the ideal way to approach.
Perfect.
Somebody will
Perfect.
take care of it.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, again, thanks, guys. It's always an honor. To work with you, Dr. Thomas, and your teammates at Piedmont Chapter SCORE, and for you guys that zoomed in, thank you. We, our purpose is really found in serving the small business owners here in South Carolina that really bring our communities to life through their investment and the risks that you guys are taking in building a business here in South Carolina and providing us as consumers with options and as employees with even more opportunity to earn a living along with something that we find meaningful. So thank you all.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the day.
Go Tigers.
Yep.